Should be set like 7 seconds. Hit it.
And this is the Wisdom Table coming to you from the Grand Houses in Harlem, USA. The Wisdom Table is a workshop of young women and myself, Brother
Hit it.
Leroy. And this is the Wisdom Table coming to you from the Grand Houses in Harlem, USA, 125th Street and Amsterdam Avenue. I'm the co-host of the Wisdom Table, and we thank the Most High for blessing us with the opportunity to be with you, you to be with us on this Sunday in April. Program today does not reflect the views, attitudes, whims, needs, or any other proclivities of the Resident Association of the Grand Houses, nor does this program reflect any views or proclivities, attitudes, or the management of this NYCHA development. However, the program does reflect the research done by the participants in this program, and we have by phone, by visual Zoom, we have a young brother who shook us up a few months ago with an analysis of Popeye's chicken. Now, some of you may say, oh, Popeye's chicken. Well, that was one heck of a show. He's a researcher, and he's based in the South. His name is Brother Kimani, and we want to thank you for joining us there, brother. God bless you.
Greetings, Brother Leroy. How are you today?
I'm excellent and striving to get blacker.
Well, that's easy to do when the sun is out.
Today, we want to discuss COVID-19, and if we have time, we want to go into 5G. And the basic question is this: you're not a medical doctor,
No.
however, you love the action and the search for information that is available to everyone if we just pick up and go after the information. However, you have made it a hobby, a habit, a love of research. When did you begin to do research on COVID? What types of research? What have you found to date?
Well, thank you for that introduction. I want to say also extend my gratitude for allowing me to come on your platform again to be able to speak to the community. In regards to my start on COVID-19, when I started, it wasn't COVID-19, it was still just coronavirus because it has about 3 names at this point. They be switching the name up. Before I even got on this research, though, I had started a series 2 years ago called Gone Viral. And that is because I offer, what I would say, counsel, so to speak, or I advise and give information to individuals that might be having certain issues, and they don't know too much about health or herbs, or the body. So people reach out to me, and starting about 4 years ago, I noticed that there was a huge explosion of individuals coming down with herpes. Now, just like anybody else, I had always come to the conclusion that herpes is something that is contracted based on having sexual relations with a partner. However, the amount of people that were reaching out was just at such a number where I was like, I know it can't be this many people going around with herpes and having sex with individuals, just spreading the virus like that. And then another peculiar thing started to happen where people were telling me that they had herpes that weren't having sexual relations with anyone. And even with me digging deep in their past and them disclosing, some of their most personal information, there was nothing in there that showed that they shared a bed with anybody and ended up contracting it. So we had a situation of a sexual viral outbreak occurring without the sex. So that had me start a series called Gone Viral, which I started 2 years ago, where I was doing a series of videos to kind of explain what a virus was, how you get infected, what happens in the cell, the immune system. And I kept that consistent. right around the top of the year, I was just coming back from an annual retreat that my wife and I do with our company, Green Life Travel and Retreats, where we take people out of their toxic environments and take them to a very healing environment in my homeland of St. Croix. So we had just gotten back, and upon us returning, she brought to my attention coronavirus. She said, "Have you heard anything about coronavirus?" And I was like, "No, I don't know what you talk about." And she was like, "You might want to look into it." Now, this was early January. This was before Kobe Bryant passed. This was before a lot of things were taking place that everybody's attention was on. But for some reason, she felt the need to bring this to my attention. So, I listened to my wife. She always seems to lead me in the right direction with a great deal of things. So I took her suggestion, and I started doing some investigation. And I noticed that, there was just something different about this. And this was way before it spread to any other country. It was still just in Wuhan, China. But that is when I started actually disseminating the information to the community and to the public about it. This was back in January. My first presentation was the last week of January. Got to get some water. Now, in my investigations on the coronavirus, what I had come to find out was that the people of Wuhan, apparently there was a food market where they sold like underground animal meats, wild game, because you go to a supermarket, there's 5 basic meats you're going to always find, seafood, lamb, chicken, beef, pork, sometimes goat, but there's really never anything more wild than that. The wildest people get is probably rabbit, venison, buffalo, things like that, maybe duck, frog legs, escargot, but you don't really get into snakes, bats, gorillas, lions, hippos, giraffes. There's pretty much a small amount of meats that people eat here in this country. But I think a lot of people are aware that Asians have a more diverse palate when it comes to eating animals. So this particular fish market, this sea market that they were at, was selling underground foods, and apparently people got snakes and bats. And because this coronavirus is an ancient virus, and what I mean by ancient virus is that it's nothing new that popped up. It's something that goes back thousands of years, and it's actually found native inside of bats. So people want an impression that because people of Wuhan are known for consuming bats in the underground, that somebody bought a bad batch of bats and through that ended up spreading the coronavirus. So there was a large search. Well, really, there wasn't a large search, but there was a lack of presenting suspect 0. And suspect 0 represents the first person who gets infected, who's infecting everybody else. And this person was just not known in the beginning. So then as I kept digging, I found out that not too far from this market was the Wuhan Viral Institute laboratory, where they actually had a viral lab not far from this animal market. So I found that very interesting. I also found interesting that they just opened up that one because the other one in Beijing actually had a leak at their viral lab where MERS, which is another form of the coronavirus, which is known as Middle Eastern Respiratory Syndrome. There's also SARS, which is severe acute respiratory syndrome, where all of these viruses seem to attack the respiratory system, the system that deals with breathing, lungs, trachea, so forth and so on. Now, every time I read articles or I do my research and I study, I always apply the information that I already had came to a conclusion on. And one particular narrative that I've been speaking on for the past 3 years, where a lot of people haven't really been paying attention too much or not understood the severity of it, but I think now people are definitely paying more attention to it, is the whole topic of 5G, which means fifth generation. And fifth generation is talking about the latest generation of broadband or pipeline in regards to the speed of information. So, you know, in the beginning, we were dealing with 1G, you know, with the big giant super duper block phones, you know, and then 2G with like the flip phones, you know, then we went to 3G. I believe the Apple phone came with 4G. And then, you know, now we're moving into 5G. So it's always been a situation where there was technology, but the actual frequency hadn't been developed yet of that level. Now we're at a time where you have the technology and you also have the pipeline. And what I mean by pipeline is, if you have an appliance at home, such as a television, you know, a DVD, which people don't have no more, a radio, that technology is its own thing, and it has a plug, and it's not functional until you put it in the wall and you tap into the pipeline that we would call, you know, electricity or current or power in your home. And now that you tapped into the power, you can use the particular device. So it's the same thing with the phones. The cell phones aren't really of any use in regards to, you know, all of the little bells and whistles it has until you tap into the pipeline, which is all the different generations of frequencies. Now, these frequencies have always been impacting civilization, so to speak. There's been a lot of talk lately of the 1918 Spanish flu, and it's interesting because in the early 1900s, that's when they started erecting all the radio towers, you know, and then we got into the world wars, and then they started dealing with the radar, you know, and every time there's been these huge outbreaks, viral outbreaks, it always coincided with the electrification of the earth. All right, so now we're at a time where that's still happening. Now, the reason why a frequency can be seen as something harmful is because our body operates on hertz. Hertz deals with cycles per second. And when you're talking cycles per second, you're talking about frequency coming from something. If I can give an example using color, color is a representation of frequency. It's just that frequencies we normally can't see with our eyes. However, color allows us to be able to see particular frequencies. So when you say, I see the color red, what you're really saying is, I see 700 nanometers. Nano means 1 billion. So a nanometer is 1 billionth of a meter. And the reason why it's so small is because it's talking about the distance between the particular wavelengths that make the wave up. So when something is 700 nanometers and you have something that's 300 nanometers, the 300 nanometers is a higher frequency. Why? Because it has more cycles in it in the amount of time that the other particular frequency has. So if I can make that even more simple, let's just think of using the bathroom. All right, you got to urinate. You have to go and pee. For those that might not know what urination is. So if I have two people and I give one of them water and I give the other person a bunch of bread, right? The person that I gave water to is going to use the bathroom more frequent, while the person who ate bread is going to use the bathroom less frequent. The person who's using the bathroom more frequently, the reason why you say they're using it more frequently is because there's a shorter period of time in between each time he goes to the restroom, while the person who's eating the bread, the time in between him using the bathroom is greater. So when you look at the red color, there's going to be a bigger distance between. It's like that person that ate the bread. While ultraviolet, there's a shorter distance in between each time. So it's like the person who drank the water. So when you think of frequency, think of frequently. So color is nothing more than a visual display of a frequency, okay? Now, with that being said, on the electromagnetic spectrum, color, or the visible spectrum, represents a small little slice. The rest of the electromagnetic spectrum is occupied by microwaves, radio waves, before the color spectrum, and then after the color spectrum, you got X-rays, gamma rays, cosmic radiation. Now, when we go to get an X-ray, you notice that the doctor, you know, they would used to wear lead aprons. You have them standing 10 feet away. And the reason why they stand away from you is because of something called the inverse square law. The inverse square law, I equate to someone passing gas. I like making things simple for folks. So if you in a room and somebody rips one and it's not of a pleasant scent, the first thing you're going to do after you acknowledge the smell is you're going to leave that area. You're going to move far away from the source of the smell. Okay. So I equate the inverse square law to that states that wherever there is a source of radiation, the further away you move from the source, the less that radiation is going to affect you. All right, so that's called the inverse square law. So when we're dealing with frequencies such as 5G, and it's a high concentration of energy, like I said, starting with radio waves, going into microwaves, and you go into millimeter waves, then you go into the visible spectrum, X-rays, gamma rays, cosmic radiation. People, the people that deal with X-rays, such as the doctors, they abide by that inverse square law by distancing themselves away from the patient so that they don't get affected by the radiation that they're putting on that patient, because it's ionizing radiation, meaning that radiation has the ability to ionize particles in your body, thus leading to mutations, you know, and other problems and issues in your system that can affect you. The reason why we feel that radio waves, as well as millimeter waves and radio waves, millimeter waves, microwaves, are not going to hurt us, is because they're on the other side of the visible spectrum, where it's called non-ionizing radiation. So, you know, if a millimeter wave is around, people don't feel they have to stand away 10 feet. They don't think the inverse square law applies, but it does. Is that they're both ionizing radiation. It's just that the X-ray is stronger, so you'll get affected in a shorter period of time, just like high frequency shows you, you know, like I just explained with the urination. While the non-ionizing radiation affects you just like an X-ray will, it just takes a longer period of time to happen. But the reason why, you know, that really doesn't apply is because an X-ray is something that you might get once, twice a year, but a cell phone is something you keep in your pocket all day. You're using all day. You're around radio towers all day, radio all day, television all day, tablet all day, computer all day. So if you take a bunch of small stimuli, but you have a small stimuli that you're using so much all the time, that amount equates to the ionizing radiation, and in some cases even worse. Now, our body operates off hertz, like I said earlier, cycles per second. But our heart is like 7.43 hertz. Our brain is like 8 hertz. The earth is 7.83 hertz. 5G, 5th generation millimeter waves, are 30 gigahertz to 300 gigahertz. That's a wide band. That's a huge difference. That's like the difference between $30 million and $300 million. Okay. Both of them is a lot of money, but I'm assuming people would pick the 300 over the 30 every single time, because there's a lot of 30s in that 300, you know? So gigahertz is billions of hertz. That's what the giga stands for. So if you're dealing with an electromagnetic based system, because our system is based on electromagnetic frequencies. When we see, when we hear, it's all electromagnetic waves that our brain and our nervous system knows how to reconfigure into picture, sound, or anything that we can comprehend. That's what our brain does. Now, you can't tell me that we operate on hertz, on a hertz level, but then on the flip, we're getting bombarded by gigahertz all day long and think that that's not going to affect anyone, you know? So to go back to my original point that I started with Wuhan, what I noticed that Wuhan is one of the first cities to do a full 5G rollout of over 10,000 5G towers. Okay, I think it's about 10,500 to 11,000. That's a lot of 5G, you know? And right around the time that they hit the switch on all this 5G, all of a sudden people start having flu-like symptoms. And the thing about 5G is 5G affects and suppresses your immune system. And through the suppression of the immune system and also the induction of flu-like symptoms that 5G has been already documented to do, we have the beginnings of something, you know, interesting happening. You know, so I took a notice of this when I did my first presentation, that we have this virus outbreak in the same town that there's a huge amount of 5G at. And then I said that anywhere that there was going to be a huge 5G rollout, you're going to notice that this outbreak or other disease pathological states are going to follow. And no sooner did I say that, then you start seeing 5G, or rather the coronavirus, just spread throughout the whole world. Y'all still there?
Very much so.
I'm still here.
Yes,
Oh,
sir.
go ahead, Brother Leroy.
No, go ahead, Kimani.
Okay. So with coronavirus,
Kimani,
yes.
okay, on your last sentence, the rollout.
Mm-hmm.
Now, okay, so I'm, as a listener, I'm looking for the connection, the Wuhan rollout and the rollout that's here, the rollout that is Iran, the rollout.
Right. Oh no, we definitely gonna get there. Definitely gonna get there.
Go ahead, brother.
So coronavirus is a virus, first of all. And what is a virus? We have to understand that a virus is nor dead nor alive. It's just like talking about a crystal. Okay. If you had a crystal in your body causing you harm, you wouldn't say, okay, what drug do I take to kill the crystal? You know, or there's a crystal alive in my body. It's not alive, it's not dead. So really you would say, how would I deactivate the crystal, or how would I rid my body of the crystal? And what a virus is, I tell everybody to imagine a flash drive. I know everybody knows what a flash drive is.
Not everybody.
Okay, so for those that don't know what a flash drive is, a flash drive, like this one right here, is a small device that you utilize in order to copy from a file on your computer, which you will call your hard drive. Because think about it, what is a flash? When you think flash, the first thing you're going to think of is light, but not just any type of light, a quick display of light, a quick display so fast that you almost feel that it never even happened. That's why it's called a flash. All right. So a flash drive and a hard drive is hard. That means it's there. It's not moving anywhere. It's like your brain. It stays in your skull. But if you take a piece of paper and you write something down that you're trying to remember, right? That piece of paper can be seen as you transferring a file, and that paper would be the flash drive. So this is a flash drive that you would plug into your computer. And with that, you would be able to transfer files from your hard drive on your computer to the flash drive. Then I can take this flash drive and I can plug it into another device and print out that information I copied. Let's say it's a blueprint, right? So now I print the blueprint out at a FedEx printing facility. Then I can take that blueprint, I can give it to to some contractors, and then what would happen? The foreman will be able to disseminate the responsibilities to all the contractors so that they can start building based on the specs of the blueprint. Now, in your cell, the hard drive would be your DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid, your genetics. The flash drive would be something called messenger RNA, which is a single strand similar to your DNA that actually has copied a file from your DNA. Now, your DNA is extremely vast. Okay, your DNA is so vast that if you lined all your DNA up one by one, it would go from here to the sun and back 300 times. It's ridiculous. So it's a lot of information, just like your hard drive on your computer has a lot of information, but you want to pick one file, and out of your DNA, you want to pick from one gene. So the same way a file is a section of your hard drive, a gene is a section of the DNA, and your messenger RNA is the flash drive that you copy that section of that file onto. Now, your organelles that sit in your cell called ribosomes, those are the contractors that receive the blueprint. And once they receive that blueprint, they start to build your proteins, which is how you turn words into flesh. All right. That's how that happens. So a virus is nothing more than a flash drive. What it is, it's an envelope of proteins with that houses inside of it a flash drive, which means that as these free flash drives are floating around in the air or in your body or on surfaces, when they come in contact with the computer, like you and me, that flash drive can then plug into the computer, and now that file can get downloaded into your system. Now, sometimes files provide great amount of information. It could be PDF files and videos and all types of stuff to make you laugh, make you learn something, entertain you, clean your system, might be a firewall to give you more self-defense. But then you might have some defective files too, which in a computer, what did they call it when your computer's infected? Isn't that the term they use? Your computer's infected and you have to get antiviral software. So if something's wrong with the flash drive, if something's wrong with that genetic information and it gets downloaded into you, then you end up downloading a compromised file into your system, which will compromise your system. So that's how you got to see a virus. A virus is a file on a flash drive that could either be defective or it can be good. All viruses are not bad. When you say a virus is bad, you're going to say that it's a pathogenic, okay, meaning that it's a pathogen, or it leads to pathology, meaning disease, the breaking down of the body. So I wanted to go over that point so you can understand what a virus is. So a coronavirus is a virus that has these particular proteins that stick out from their envelope. So when you see it under a microscope, it looks like, the rays of the sun. So that's why we're told it's called corona. That's not why it's called corona, but that's what we're told it's called corona. So you got Wuhan, China. You have these 5G towers. You have the 5G frequencies being released amongst all these people. These people are living in a pretty much already in a quarantine, because we have to understand that Wuhan, China, this was during the winter time, meaning that there's no UVB light being released from the sun. The sun releases UVB light in the spring and summertime in the high latitude regions of the planet. UVB means ultraviolet B. So ultraviolet is the high end of the visible spectrum, with infrared being the low end, okay, red to purple. So ultraviolet itself is split into 3 categories, and B in particular is the frequency that's responsible for converting something called 7-hydro cholesterol that sits at the base of our skin where our fat is at, and it converts that cholesterol into vitamin D. So we make our own vitamin D by exposing ourselves to the sun. But in Wuhan, China, in the winter time, there is no UVB. And in addition to that, there's such a large amount of pollution in that area because China has a population over 1 billion, and they deal with a lot of industry. There's a huge blanket of pollution that blocks what little sun that might poke through. It blocks all that out. So you're dealing with lack of sunlight, you're dealing with a heavy amount of pollution, you're dealing with no vitamin D, and then at the same time, you're dealing with a rollout of 5G towers. Now, we're talking about 10,500, we're talking about power density. So one person on a phone might not be that harmful, you know, maybe only to that person. But if you take a state like a football stadium full of people all on their phone, all tapped in, the power density increases exponentially. And now every individual is getting beamed by the collective of that frequency rather than them just getting beamed by their individual phone. All right. Now, what we started hearing was that, you know, this virus was transferred by way of wild animals to individuals because it has a history in bats. So people were consuming bats, and that's how they say they got it. But like I said, there was also a virology laboratory not far from that center, and now it's coming out that there had been a leak from that lab. So this particular virus ended up exploding exponentially inside of Wuhan because another thing that people don't know is the fact of how microbes, meaning bacteria, fungi, and viruses, all react to millimeter waves, radio waves, non-native electromagnetic radiation. They respond to it in a way where it explodes in growth. It replicates at an enormous rate. And proof of this was in a study with these twin astronauts. Everybody can look this study up. Just type in twin astronaut health study, okay? And it'll come right up. And in the situation with these twin astronauts, one of the astronauts wasn't able to get cleared to go out of space, so they stayed down on Earth. The other twin went up on the space station. So you got a situation where really one person is in 2 locations because they share the same genes. They're twins. So the twin that went up in the space station, when they did their readings, when he got back, he was suffering from all types of inflammation, diseases, bacterial infections, so forth and so on. And the reason why is because of him being bombarded with the frequencies up there on that space station. Because you know they're not operating on no 1G or no space station. You know, they're going to have the top stuff up there, you know, and they're doing their best to block the cosmic radiation that's up there as well that he's being susceptible to. So what they noticed was fungi grows at an uncontrolled rate. Bacteria grows at an uncontrolled rate. Viruses grow at an uncontrolled rate when subjected to non-native electromagnetic frequencies, all right? Non-native meaning not the sun, not natural. So you're dealing with a situation where a virus is released, and at the same time a virus is released, a 5G rollout takes place where it's activated. Now you have a stimulus, the same way the phone is a device for the 5G so you can operate it. You can look at the virus as a device for the 5G to allow it to work as well. So now you have this 5G becoming way more aggressive, affecting people at an alarming rate. And it wasn't always about people sneezing on one another. And we'll get into that later, why that's not even necessary in this case with this virus, that it doesn't have to be spread one by one, because in a lot of cases, a lot of us already have the dormant virus in us already. And the only thing that needs to take place for it to come about is your lifestyle as well as the 5G in order for it to activate. Now, we started noticing, yes.
Let me ask you a question. Sorry to interrupt you when you're going so well. But when you were talking about the 5G, could you go back just a second and just remind everybody this is going to be on YouTube and a place where people can go back and listen to this more than once so you can get where he's coming from. But could you go back just a little bit and go talk to us like we're in the 5th grade and just explain the difference between why a microwave oven can burn up your food, you can put something burn up, and why when you get up to the millimeters, which the most conversion radios that they have now are 60 gigs, and explain to people what the interference and impediment is between the different frequencies. Because I think if you did that on the 5th grade level, people will kind of get what you're talking about. So because everybody's got a microwave oven, they'll have a marker. So explain to them about the microwave.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
definitely.
So explain about that. Tell them what the microwave oven does in terms of the frequency and why the food gets hot, and then explain to them why having the high-powered transmission device called the cell phone has this as a cumulative effect and what that's doing. Sure. Say those 2 little pieces so people can catch that.
Sure.
That's important. Thanks.
So the microwave oven, anybody that's using a microwave oven, if you don't know it, I know you have observed that what it does is it heats water up. And one of the best ways to know how a microwave will affect you is if you heat up meat, which a lot of people don't want to do in a microwave oven. Because if you take a steak, a juicy, perfect steak that you like to eat, and you put it in a microwave, what's going to happen to it? It's going to dry out. And that's exactly what these frequencies do, is they dehydrate us. And we're 99% water. And all of our functions, chemical functions that occur inside of our body, including our immune system, reproductive system, nervous system, you name it, is the medium is water that allows all of this stuff to function. So if you're dealing with something that dehydrates you or pulls your water away, then you're dealing with something that's going to affect the functionality of your system. The second observation,
Right, that's the microwave.
Right. The second observation.
So now you explain. Slow down, because you're too smart for them. You're too smart for all of us. So the second, no, this is good. The second, so the microwave oven.
I'm not done with the microwave though. I'm not done.
I know. I'm just
okay.
Just the 5th grade, because I know you're not done. I know how you roll.
Okay.
But I'm just, because we want to get people to get it. So the microwave oven operates at a frequency that actually affects the water within something. Mm-hmm. That's simple enough.
Yes.
Cool. Go, doctor.
So the second thing that a microwave does that you've observed with a mic, because I'm talking about what people observe. It really don't matter how deep I get. What matters is what people observe. So if you can observe a thing, then you can see a thing. And if you see a thing, you can lock it in your mind, and then you can take your personal time to reflect. I'm not here for you to get it right now. This is what video is for. Video is about 24 frames a second, meaning each second represents a picture, and a picture's worth 1,000 words. So what is a movie worth? So these videos and these audio is for you to listen over and over and over and over again, the same way you listen to your favorite song 1,000,000 times. Midnight Train to Georgia, Gladys Knight. How many times has an individual listened to that song? So when you're dealing with learning, never listen to anything one time and never take my word for it. Take it with a grain of salt. I'm listing terms so that you can take my terms and you can do the research and find out for yourself, because you might get it much different than how I'm giving it to you. Now, the other observation that I know y'all have noticed is the fact that you are not going to take any leftover food that's wrapped in aluminum foil and put it in that microwave. You're not going to put a plate with a fork on it in that microwave. Why aren't you going to do that? Because if you have observed it in the past and experienced what happens when there's metal in a microwave, you'll notice that a fire will occur. There will be a small combustive explosion that ends up taking place. First there's sparks, and then there's fire, and then it can get even worse because it's metal. So you can't put metal in a microwave. Well, what is at the center and the core of all of our enzymes, which are enzymes represent molecules in our body that have the ability to speed up chemical reactions. Okay, what is speeding up a chemical reaction? I'll make it real simple. When you want to make ice, you take water and put it in the freezer. You have to wait 20 minutes, 30, 40 minutes for some ice to come, right? But with an enzyme, you could put water in the freezer and in 2 seconds you pull it out and you got an ice cube. So it speeds up reactions so they happen a lot faster than they would happen on their own. That's what an enzyme does. Well, all of our enzymes in our body has a mineral core to it, meaning a mineral is responsible for causing the enzyme to work properly. Okay. In order for us to transfer oxygen around, we need iron. In order for us to deal with B12, we need cobalt. Okay. In order for us to stop the replication of viruses in our cell, we need zinc. Okay, so we use minerals in order to formulate enzymes to do a lot of things in our body. So that means we have metals all throughout us. Our blood is nothing but metal. It's all iron in there. So if you know that you can't put metal in a microwave, because if you do, it's going to make sparks and it's going to catch on fire, what do you think happens to the metal in your body when you subject it to microwave? You're gonna, exactly, that's what's gonna happen. That buzz right there. So those are microwaves. Now, radio waves are first, then you got microwaves, then you get into millimeter waves. Now, millimeter waves are a little bit stronger. Where do you find millimeter waves at? You find those at the airport, okay? Where is it at the airport? When you're walking through the device that you have to put your hands up, like, you know, somebody's holding a gun up at you and it scans you. And then you come out and you look on the screen and it shows an outline of your body. And then if you have anything in your pockets, those areas where there's something at, you see a big, you know, colorful square there to notify the TSA agents, oh, they got something on them. So what does that tell you if you don't know any science at all? Oh, I went in the device and it obviously is hitting me with some type of frequency, but it's not penetrating so deep, because if it did, when I come out and look at that screen, it'll be showing my ribs and my heart and my lungs. But no, it ain't showing that. It would show my skin and me looking like I'm naked. No, I'm not seeing that, but I am seeing my clothes. So these millimeter waves are able to penetrate through my clothing at that depth in order for it to see if there's anything that I'm carrying on me. Now, dealing with that device once a year, maybe even once a season, ain't gonna be that bad, especially if you're getting somewhere to offset that exposure. But if you're a TSA agent and you've been working with that device for 10 years at least, then more than likely you have abnormal cell growth in your body, which most people call cancer. Most TSA agents that have worked over 5 years have some form of cancer because the millimeter waves, the more aggressive microwaves, right? That frequency has the ability to mutate. Okay, what do I mean by mutate? Mutate means this. Real simple. In order for you to build flesh in your body, it starts off with genetic code, with DNA, which is nothing but letters. So letters have to be arranged in a certain way that your body interprets and takes those words and is able to build things off those words, which means that knowing how to spell and proofreading is everything. Because if you're trying to spell the word cat and you spell it K-I-T-H, you just misspelled the word cat. In your body, that would represent a mutation. Because when you hand that piece of paper over to somebody and they read it and it doesn't spell C-A-T, but it spells K-I-T-H, then they're going to be, they're going to, whatever they do is going to be based on them reading that wrong spelling. So a mutation means a wrong spelling occurred when flesh or proteins or enzymes were being made. And when you get penetrated by these frequencies, those frequencies causes a misspelling so that you start producing proteins, enzymes, hormones, so forth and so on in your body that is not based on the proper spelling. Okay, so misspelling or not being able to spell right will lead to mutation in your body. And the catalyst for the misspelling is the frequencies that are occurring. So if you ask a TSA agent or you know anyone that's been working there for over 5-10 years, they'll tell you that they're dealing with a host of health problems. They probably can't sleep at night. They probably get a lot of ringing in the ears, you know, things like that. And they see the doctor often and the doctor doesn't know really what's going on, but they have them on some type of anti-inflammatory medication. All right, so that's the difference between the millimeter waves and the microwaves and the radio waves. As you progressively get higher on the electromagnetic scale, the frequencies are getting smaller, but smaller means higher. Smaller means more powerful. It means stronger. Normally we associate bigger with stronger, but bigger actually means less of an impact. Like radio waves is at the lowest end. They have the longest waves. While you get up into gamma, they have some of the shortest waves, but they're more effective and they're going to be the more mutating if you expose yourself to it. And even though this is fictitious, this is to give people an idea of it. I know y'all heard of the Incredible Hulk before, right? Bruce Banner, like what happened to him? He was a scientist that got exposed to gamma radiation and it mutated him and he ended up turning into the Hulk. Now, even though that's fictitious, that gives you the idea of, you know, when we expose ourselves to electromagnetic frequencies, it causes mutation. Now, the Hulk was not a humble brother. Okay. He was like very angry and rageful, talking about Hulk smash all the time. That's kind of how everybody's energy is. Everybody's ready to fight. Everybody's angry. Everybody's mad, short-tempered. Everybody's on the Hulk smash energy because they're being mutated based on the radiation that's pouring into them. Is that what you wanted there?
That was beautiful, man. Keep going.
All right. So when we look at the path of how everybody started getting infected, we notice how in Spain it was a huge outbreak. In Italy there was a huge outbreak. In the Black community got hit. You know, it was like the Black community represented 15 to 20% of the city's population, yet it represented 70% of those infected. Then you had Jews in the Jewish community. They had a huge explosion as well. So it was kind of like certain groups of people were getting way more affected than others, you know? And it's interesting because even though this has been escalated to a pandemic, the death percentage is like 0.3%. You know, if you're dealing with a pandemic of a very aggressive virus that's fatal, then, you know, you're going to have extremely high numbers in regards to everybody who's dying. Another thing that you're going to notice is that when you look at the normal record of death in a certain amount of time in a region, let's say you look at it quarterly, you know, which is a season, let's say between December and March, right? Because between December and March, that's winter, all right? And in that time, a certain amount of people die from heart attacks, a certain amount of people die from diabetes, a certain amount of people die from cancer, so forth and so on. There's a number. So if there's a fatal pandemic, then those numbers have to be added to the baseline numbers of the normal amount of people that would die from other complications. And it's been a problem because there's really no difference in a lot of areas in regards to that, which shows, one, that a lot of people that they are recording to be dying from contracting the coronavirus and COVID-19 are the people that they say are dying from it aren't not necessarily dying from that. People are dying from heart disease, diabetes, and other things that the population would normally be dying from. However, when the coroner gets them, they're saying, oh, it was COVID-19 complication, COVID-19, COVID-19, COVID-19. So even the numbers that we do see are exaggerated, which means that it's a very low amount of people that died. And I don't think that was intentional. I think that's something that happened in error based on how this whole thing ended up getting released in the first place. I think a premature strain, and when I say strain means so like a subsidiary, a subcategory. So you might have I might say like cruciferous vegetables, right? And then under cruciferous vegetables, you got broccoli, cauliflower, broccoli rabe, Brussels sprouts. You know what I'm saying? Those are all different vegetables, but they all fall under that category. So a strain would be the same thing. So there's different strains of the coronavirus, and the coronavirus, as I'll get into shortly, has been manipulated by man's hand to become more virulent or more aggressive, more fatal, more detrimental. But I feel that the strain that has been released is just not the fatal version that I think some people wanted to get out there, because there's, and this is, and I would like to go on record to say that by no means, and am I saying that the people that have made their transition that I have no respect for, that I'm saying that they don't matter, that they died in vain. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that with a pandemic of this level, that you would think the numbers would be extremely high, and I'm grateful that they're not, you know, but there haven't been too many deaths. There's way more of an infected rate than there is a death rate. Now, these groups of people that have been suffering from it the most also share a genetic inadequacy amongst one another. Okay, and I noticed this, and I came to a conclusion that it has to have something to do with who's getting infected and who's not getting infected. Now, the name of this genetic disorder is called G6PD deficiency. G6PD. G stands for glucose, 6, P stands for phosphate, D stands for dehydrogenase deficiency. So glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency. I'm not going to keep saying the long word. I'm just going to keep saying G6PD. And the only thing you need to know about that is that it is an enzyme. Okay, it's an enzyme. What is it an enzyme for? Well, you have an immune system, right? Your immune system is responsible for warding off any invaders or any imbalances that are happening in the system, to regulate it, so you don't have to worry about your body. You could just worry about your purpose and what you're here to do, your creativity, your work. That's what we're here to do. We're here to create. And it's hard to create with a headache or a toothache. It's hard to create with a tumor. It's hard to create, you know what I'm saying, with a rash, you know, and a viral infection. It's difficult to concentrate under circumstances like that. Like, we are all here to create. So in regards to our immune system, we have a molecule that we form in our body called glutathione. I know y'all have heard of it before, not everybody, but I know a good majority of y'all have at least heard of glutathione. Now, what glutathione does is it acts as an antioxidant. I know you've heard of that term. What is that term for? Well, when you have free radicals, which are just like how they sound, you know what a radical is. A radical is like somebody that you cannot control. Now, imagine not only somebody being a radical, but a free radical, like they're free to be that uncontrolled individual, just wild all the time. Well, we create free radicals in our body in the form of unpaired electrons, meaning that there's these particles in our body that are radical, and because they're radical, they can hit into other atoms, hit into other molecules, enzymes, tissues, cells, and create a bad situation. So equate a free radical to like a drone, right? Holding a bomb, and the person controlling the drone lost control. Let's say his little remote control got broke. So now you have a drone flying uncontrollably throughout the air over people's neighborhoods holding a bomb. And that means that it could run into anything and just blow it up. Now imagine that you're constantly making these free radicals. So now you got 1 million drones with bombs flying uncontrollably everywhere. And what an antioxidant is like a giant device that's able to control all of those at one time, so it can kind of shut the drones down, bring them back so that you can remove the bomb and people are not going to get killed. Okay, so that's kind of what an antioxidant is going to do for the situation. Now, glutathione is that antioxidant. However, glutathione is a one-shot gun. Okay, so you cock it, pow, and then it's you got to reload after that. Like it's not a 6-shooter. You know what I mean? It's not a Glock. You know what I mean? It doesn't have a cartridge that has a multiple amount of bullets in it, you know, where you can keep shooting. No, glutathione shoot once, meaning that you can use glutathione once and then it becomes oxidized, meaning it turns into a state where it can't help you. And then you have an enzyme called glutathione reductase that actually is able to reduce glutathione and then turn it back into a state, or another way of putting it would be it puts another bullet back in the shotgun. Pow. So now you can cock back again and get ready for another shot. So that means glutathione's abilities is based on you being able to constantly put more ammo in the shotgun. All right. Now, in order for you to keep getting that bullet, you need this molecule called NADPH. I know I keep mentioning these words in science, and like I said, y'all are going to go back and listen to this again and write these words down, NADPH. But this is just so you can understand the mechanism. You'll do further investigations to understand, you know, the words and everything like that. Nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide phosphate reduced and oxidized. That's what the NADPH stands for. You do not have to remember that, just NADPH. NADPH is able to constantly provide the glutathione reductase enzyme with energy. Okay, it keeps giving the glutathione is responsible for reloading the glutathione, right? Glutathione reductase, its enzyme is responsible for keep loading it. Well, NADPH is what keeps providing the bullets. Okay, it's like the manufacturing plant that got the bullets, but even NADPH has to stay in full supply. If you don't have NADPH, then you have no manufacturing plant making bullets. Thus, you have no ammo to keep loading the gun back up. And this is where the enzyme glucose 6-phosphate dehydrogenase, or G6PD, comes in, because it's what keeps the manufacturing plant going, producing the ammo. All right. Without that, then you don't have no NADPH, then there's no reduction of glutathione, no immune system. It's just that simple. Now, when you have a disorder that makes you deficient in this enzyme, not only are you going to suffer from what I just talked about with the immune system, you're going to suffer from hemolytic anemia, which is a form of anemia based on the destruction of the red blood cell. Anemia means that your iron levels are dropping exponentially in your red blood cells. Thus, you're losing the ability to transport oxygen And in losing the ability to transport oxygen, you lose the ability to properly metabolize in your cells. Thus, you might be able to technically breathe, like literally you're able to bring air in, but the air is not going anywhere. Thus, you're suffocating, and the correct term is called hypoxia. So we're dealing with a global hypoxia. People are suffocating slowly. They're not able to breathe properly. Now, we were talking about frequencies earlier, and ironically enough, oxygen has a certain hertz frequency. Its frequency in the atmosphere is at 60 gigahertz. The reason why that matters at all is because one of the frequencies within side of the 5G spectrum of 30 gigahertz to 300 gigahertz is 60 gigahertz, which means that when 5G is operating at 60 gigahertz, it neutralizes the ability for the iron in your blood to bind oxygen. So once again, you're breathing in oxygen, but it's not binding to any iron. Thus, it's not getting around your body. Thus, you're suffering from lack of oxygen, suffocation, hypoxia. Now, this particular deficiency allows all of this to happen. And it's in African Americans, it's 14 to 16 out of 100, right? Out of Jews, it's 1 out of 2, upwards to 70%. It's in Spaniards, it's in Jews, it's in Iranians, and of course in Africa, it's in very high amounts. Now, the other interesting point about this deficiency is the fact that it's called an X-linked disorder. So when we were coming up in school, we did learn the difference between male and female, and that a male has an X and a Y chromosome. That's how we determine it's a male, and that a female has an X and another X chromosome. So male is XY, female is XX. So by this being an X-linked disorder, that means that it's only passed down through the woman. And because a woman has 2 X's, that means she has a chance to carry it, but not express it. However, with a male, if he gets it because he only has 1 X, he gets it every time. And this is why when you look in the news, it's majority men that are the ones dying, and men that are the ones going through most of the problems because it's an X-linked gene disorder. So, that's some more investigation that y'all could do, and, see if that's aligned or anything like that. The last point that I want to make in respect to this deficiency is the fact that it has a contraindication with a particular drug. And what a contraindication means is when doctors give medication, when they prescribe medication, getting some more water real quick. When they prescribe medication, a contraindication means that if you take that medication when you're under certain conditions, then that medication will conflict with that condition and you'll have a worse condition. So one of the hugest contraindications for people with this deficiency is malarial drugs, specifically hydroxychloroquine and chloroquine. Now, where we heard the term hydroxychloroquine from? Well, that is supposed to be the panacea for COVID-19. And when I say panacea, I'm talking about cure all. It's supposed to, it's the white knight on the white horse. However, it might benefit people of Caucasian descent a lot more than it will be able to help those with this disorder and those of African descent. And the reason why I say that is because hydroxychloroquine has a few problems. One of them is that it binds with melanin, and specifically the melanin in your retinal pigment epithelial, which is a layer in your retina. Your retina is in your eye. Your retina is responsible for you being able to see. And there's specifically an area in your retina that deals with sharp focus. When you look in front of you, what you're looking at is in high definition, high resolution, right? However, the things around that area you're looking at is a little bit more blurry, and the things to the side of you are even more blurry because your focus is right there in front of you, and that corresponds to an area in your retina. Well, the black layer, the pigmented melanated layer in your retina gets obstructed by the hydroxychloroquine in high doses, and it leads to retinopathy, which is a fancy way of saying going blind. So if you want to sacrifice your eyesight to, by chance, get rid of whatever, you know, pathology you're dealing with, you know, that would be on you. You know, now hydroxychloroquine has a contraindication with this deficiency in that it actually exacerbates, speeds up, and makes more aggressive the hemolytic anemia situation, meaning that you have a quicker rate that you're going to destroy your red blood cells. You destroy your red blood cells, you releasing all this iron. If you look at people who have COVID-19 and you tell them to take a lab, you'll see they have high ferritin levels. Ferritin is a protein that stores iron in your body when it's free floating in your blood. So if you at high ferritin, that means you have a lot of free floating iron. You're only going to have a lot of free floating iron if it's not being used by your hemoglobin. Now, the mechanisms that's responsible for holding the iron in place in your red blood cells is also responsible for an enzyme network in your body called the cytochrome P450 system. It's also inside your mitochondria, which is responsible for all of the energy dynamics of your body. So if you are dealing with this disease is messing with the ability to be able to function on multi levels. All right. And if you take this drug with this genetic disorder, it's going to make everything worse. All right. Now, I found a study where they did a study on 295 patients and came to the conclusion that hydroxychloroquine does not affect people who are G6PD deficient. So with this large study, everything I'm saying means it's moot. It's not worth anything, right? Well, if you really read the paper, you'll find out that out of the 295 patients, 84% of those patients was female. Now, I told you it's an X-linked disorder, meaning that it predominantly takes place in men. And if the scientists know this, and they're really trying to find out if there's a problem with the drug and the disorder, then why would they study the people that are not getting affected unless they're trying to control the outcome? Then on top of that, 48% of it was Caucasian women, and then I think 46 or 45% were African American. Now, also said that there's two strains. There's the Mediterranean and the African. There's not a Caucasian. There's a Mediterranean and there's an African. So not only are you testing women, but you're testing Caucasian women more than African American women. That's why y'all got the conclusions you got. And then there's a disclaimer in the last sentence that says this information doesn't apply to African Americans. So this is the conclusion I came to on why people in the Black community was suffering so much from what was going on. Now, I'm not even going to talk about the Popeyes chicken sandwiches over the summer that they've been putting in their freezer and they thawed out and started eating up on. We ain't going to talk about the home sheltering order that was given, throughout the country that makes people stay inside. So now you're beaming yourself all day with all your devices. You're not getting outside, getting any sun. You're not working. You're not being active. I know you're not throwing down in the kitchen. You're not clipping the peas. Y'all are not sitting around in a circle popping peas and de-ribbing collard greens. This is not going on. You know what I mean? Folks is eating artificial, compromised frankenfood. So there's a whole incubation period going on right now. And then you deal with people that are in impoverished neighborhoods where there's already a large amount of pollution and other factors that influence the fact that immune systems become compromised. So as long as your immune system is being suppressed by all of these factors, then anything can hurt you, especially something particularly made to hurt you. Let me get some more water real quick. All right. Now, where do I want to go now? Okay, so hydroxychloroquine has a 500-year history. A lot of people don't know this, but the colonialization, the oppression, the raping and pillaging of the world is actually due to hydroxychloroquine. And I know you're like, what are you talking about? Well, before imperialists had the ability to penetrate the tropical regions where indigenous societies were at for their resources, you know, they found it very difficult to do that. They were not able to go in the hot jungle, first of all, because the UV hitting that skin is too hot. You know, certain groups of people are not prepared for the tropical regions. You're not going to find a polar bear in the same environment as a gorilla, okay, so to speak. So polar bears were coming in gorilla territories, getting hurt, getting damaged. So the last thing they were going to do was go deep inside of a rainforest, swamp, or jungle when they couldn't even stand on the beach. The second issue was malaria, okay, because the mosquitoes, you know, even the Pope and the Vatican was dealing with this in Italy, in the Vatican in Rome, and they were calling it marsh fever, okay. And this is a situation where mosquitoes are spreading parasites inside of their blood and destroying all their blood cells to the point they can't recover and they're dying. Now, it wasn't until they went to Peru did they find a bark by an indigenous people, and the name of the bark is called cinchona bark, that got renamed to Jesuits bark. And eventually they found out that the active component in this bark that helped with malaria and fever was called quinine. Now, of course, once they started taking this quinine, they was able to penetrate the tropical jungles. And because they was able now to penetrate the jungles and penetrate the swamp and go in all these areas there that their physiology normally wouldn't let them in, they were able to now function, get inside of these areas and function. Now I have a bottle right here. Where is my, give me 1 second, y'all, because I want to show you something. Where's my it's my little flashlight. Just give me 1 second. Is it in there? Let's see. Where she put it at? Okay, here we go. All right, sorry about that. So, like I said, UV, right? And they're not able to take the sun. So the thing about quinine is quinine has the ability to absorb UV light and emit blue light as a result. And a great way to experiment with that is to get some tonic water. You ever heard of gin and tonic? Winston Churchill made a statement that said that gin and tonic has done more for Englishmen than all doctors in history. This is also the drink that James Bond drinks. He drinks a quinine-based drink that when he says shaken, not stirred, he's drinking quinine. He always does that before he goes in and tears somebody up. All right, because this is this active component is a component that these imperialists and these colonialists have used for 500 years in order to take over the planet. It gave them a certain amount of power. And if you take a UV flashlight and you shine it on tonic water, what you're going to end up having now is blue light emitted. I don't know if y'all see that. I have it in the camera. Look at that. Now, if they have quinine all in their blood, and now they can deal with UV. All right. So this almost, in a way, melanated them, to make a long story short. Okay. So this hydroxychloroquine has always been an ace in the bag for them for 500 years in history. And here we go in the, you know, in this time, and it's still being talked about and it's still being used. So Ironically, I just brought up James Bond, and that's going to lead me into my next portion. But before I go in there, I want to see, is there anything that y'all want me to speak on or anything you want to interject at this time? Yes, no, maybe so. Okay. I guess not. All right. Oh, okay. There you go. Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. I was saying, was there anything that y'all wanted to interject or ask on before I went into the next part?
Well, I thought the quinine thing was interesting because I myself don't mind a gin and tonic as well. And I thought it was quite interesting that it turns blue when you put the light in it. We can see the blue quite clearly when you did that, that little experiment. Came through very clearly. And I'm just wondering, I mean, you know, where do you get all this stuff from?
Where do I get all
Yeah, man, you know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, you know, like some people, you know, they talk and you go, but you know, you have this way of, like you did with the chicken, man. You caught everybody with that, man. Not that it was the chicken, but the way you just methodically went through every little piece and explained it, which I think you should come back on again as well and continue the lecture along these particular lines, because I did enjoy the thing about the 5G. Even if you didn't agree with that, it's a cogent explanation that makes sense. Whether you agree with every single part of it or not, it's cogent and it makes sense. And I think people need more of that. You know what I mean? And I only interjected about the fifth grade thing because you were right. You know, you could go back and watch it continuously. Only because sometimes you don't want people that try to act like you don't want them to try to act like they don't get it, like a teenager, you know? You know how teenagers are, they act like something, everything is hard off the top.
Right.
Except for what they're interested in. So, you know what I mean? So I think that's important. And, you know, so, yeah, but you should continue on your train of thought. I just want to, you know, encourage you that you're going down the right road.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Thank you. I'm gonna close going into this portion right here because, you know, whenever people want to understand what's going on, I always suggest that you follow the money. Follow the money and you'll know what's going on. When you follow the money here, this is what you're going to end up finding. I always suggest that you follow the money. Uh-oh, I'm hearing, you had your phone on mute. I think you had it on mute before.
Yeah, you know, you mean me? Yeah, I had mine on mute so I could pay attention to what you're doing and my engineering duties as well.
Somebody's unmuted because I'm only hearing an echo.
Oh, my bad. That's me. Don't worry, bro. That was me.
Oh, okay.
That was me. I got, you know, monitoring stuff.
All right. So what I suggest everybody to do is to watch a film that was released as of recent digitally. This is one of the reasons why Harvey Weinstein ended up dealing with the whole mess he just got dealt with and getting convicted and going to jail. A lot of people think it's because of what he was doing to women and the casting couch situation, but that only happened because of things that he didn't do that he was supposed to do. One thing that he did is he decided to release a film called The Current War. And when everything happened with him, his company went bankrupt. The movie got put on the shelf. It was just released digitally, but I know it was edited all the way down. You can kind of tell when you watch it that it's missing a lot. And it is pretty much a summarized version of whatever the original was. But it's called The Current War. And what it is about the war of the currents between Nikola Tesla, Thomas Edison, George Westinghouse, and everybody else at the turn of the 1900s. So we have to understand that what we're dealing with now is a story that goes on beyond 100 years ago, and then it's kind of hitting its head at this point right now. And the war that was occurring was the fact that, you know, the electrification of the earth was what everybody wanted to do. You know, whoever was responsible for powering the planet will have all the power. I mean, look at the term that they use. You know, if you power the earth, you have all the power. So that's what it was all about. It was all about patent law. So where this coronavirus situation right here that we're dealing with globally just has to deal with groups of individuals who want to have control over all the resources. Anytime resources fall back into the hands of the people and the people are being creative with the resources that they get, there's individuals that don't want that to happen because they feel they want to be able to control all of the resources. And in order to control people, you know, you have to create a certain dynamic. And usually the dynamic that happens that puts people into a position of power is a war. All right. So we know we had 2 world wars, and the Third World War has been talked about for a long time, except the Third World War isn't about boots on the ground and troops and guns. The Third World War is in your body. So
It's a better
why
kind of
do I
war.
have to pay for 1,000 troops with 1,000 guns and bombs and planes and gas and blowing this up and destroying that, when I can just get inside of your internal universe and sabotage all of that? So if you go back, I need people to look up a guy named David Sarnoff. David Sarnoff. Okay. Now, David Sarnoff was known as the general. He wasn't just known as the general as slang. He was literally a general who ended up heading RCA,
CA
okay, which is Radio Corporations of America,
of America.
and he headed NBC. So broadcasting, television, right, was overseen by the military. We have to keep that in mind, okay? Now, what David Sarnoff did was use Giovanni Marconi. You need to look him up too, Marconi, as a fall guy for the person who stole all of Nikola Tesla's patents. Because this whole thing has to deal with patents. There's people that have created water engines for cars, free energy devices, you know, levitation, all types of inventions. But people end up getting murdered. They never see the time of day. They go bankrupt. All types of stuff happen because patents get taken by the government, especially if there's a war or anything going on, because they make the statement that we have to take all patents just in case we have to use it to defend our nation. Right? Like let's talk about Thomas Edison and the light bulb. Like for those who don't know it, that was Lewis Latimer's work.
Well, that came to mind because I thought immediately that's what they did to Tesla. They used Thomas Edison, and then the guy Philo that did the TV guy, they did him in the same way.
That's right. That's right.
They did him the same way they did Tesla.
This General Sarnoff, right?
He was something else, man.
What ended up happening was they started to study viruses, so they started creating companies. All right. Now, oh yeah, let me say this now. Even though he's General David Sarnoff and he's dealing with the US military and he's a general there, no, he's actually of Britain. So what we're dealing with right now when we say coronavirus, remember corona means crown. Like the British crown. And if you notice, when all of this stuff started popping off, all of them dispersed. You had Prince, I forget which prince it is that's with Markle. They left. They was like they're leaving they're leaving out of the palace and they're coming to Canada or whatever. So they dipped. Then we heard Prince Charles had it and he disappeared. The Queen disappeared. Everybody just started dispersing, you know, out of nowhere. So this guy was actually stationed with Britain. He represented Britain and a whole British invasion. Like we see it now in acting in the Black community. Every movie that we watch right now that has, you know, a decent budget and has a decent script, the people of color that's in there are British actors. Even with Queen and Slim, both of those represent British actors, and the sister in it is actually with a Caucasian by the name of Joshua Jackson, who used to play Pacey on Dawson's Creek. Okay, one of the most Caucasian shows you can watch on TV, but that's another story. But we've always dealt with a British invasion, even with the Beatles. You know, there's always been a situation where Britain has come over into the States in order to kind of flood everything over. And there's a reason for that, because whenever a war takes place, if you really want to control a people, then you make the other side feel that they won, so that in their complacency, you're really controlling everything going on. And that's what goes back to the American Revolution years ago. You know, Americans think that America won that revolution because of, you know, all the independence that came, but there's never been a disconnect from the British rule. They have always still had their hands in everything just behind the scenes. So if you look at Britain, there's a huge amount of animal testing facilities. Specifically, you got Pirbright Institute and you got Muriel. Now, if you look up Pirbright Institute and you look up Muriel, you'll see, matter of fact, I'll read it verbatim, what it says. And this is stuff y'all could look up on Wikipedia, because people gonna always put the information up, because if you're too distracted, you know, looking at TikTok on IG and Snapchat, you know, then you're not gonna look any of this up, because you're not gonna hear the names for it to show any relevancy. So Pirbright, right? Let me see. Oh no, that's why. That's just Pirbright. That's actually a location. I meant Pirbright Institute. Hold on. Okay, Pirbright Institute is a research institute in Surrey, England, dedicated to the study of infectious diseases of farm animals. Now, I'm going to ask you a question real quick. The average citizen is referred to as what? Human. We would think, right? But no, we're not seen as human in law. What are we in law? How are we seen? What's the term used for us in law? What type of slavery is it called?
I don't know.
Chattel slavery. They call it chattel slavery.
It's an English term.
And when you talk about chattel, you're talking about cattle. You're talking about livestock. You're talking about sheep. So the Pirbright Institute is a research institute in England dedicated to the study of infectious diseases of farm animals. Now, they do study farm animals, but we are referred to as the farm animals as well. I just want y'all to keep that in mind. All right?
Thank you.
Now, Muriel, I want to read Muriel before I say my next point. Hold on. Muriel is a multinational animal health company. Okay, animal health company. Now, we were talking about the Popeyes chicken sandwich before, right? Talking about the opioids and everything like that. All of those artificial ingredients that I read, some of those were nanotech. What do I mean by nanotech? Nanometer means 1/1000th of a meter. So when you say nano, it means 1/100000th. So nanotech means things at a scale of 1/1000th of a meter, which means it's at an atomic scale. When you build nanotechnology, you're building something at an atomic scale. Why is that an issue? Because if you're consuming nanotech that's placed inside of farm animals, then the only thing you need to do to activate that nanotech is hit it with a frequency, such as a strong frequency in the gigahertz range, such as 5G. Now, after you look up Muriel and Pirbright Institute, what you'll find is Pirbright Institute has a specifically has a patent for coronavirus. I'm going to say that again. Pirbright Institute had, you could type it in, Pirbright Institute coronavirus patent. It's not hidden. It's going to come right up.
Wouldn't that be common? Because we had another doctor, she came on and said that most people who work on farms know all about the coronavirus more than most normal people.
Right, because they have to test. Oh, I'm sorry.
Gotcha. No, go ahead. No, do it.
Yeah. I was gonna say because they have to test it out. They can't test out on humans. It's gonna get exposed, and then that thing gets shut down immediately. But when they say, "Oh, we studying the health of animals so that we can ensure we could keep giving y'all hamburgers and steaks all the time and chicken legs," then people are gonna be all for it.
Okay, so that makes a lot of sense to me because I've never understood why we go around eating animals and act like we're not doing that.
Oh,
we're eating animals. All of us are walking around eating animals, and they're commercializing it and making it all seem like you're supposed to do that.
That's right. So
doesn't seem like you're supposed to be walking around eating the animals, man.
Look up a guy named Charles Lieber. Charles Lieber. Okay. Pull him up right now too. Charles Lieber is an American chemist and pioneer in nanoscience and nanotechnology. Okay, I'm going to scroll down to the end because this is his most recent info. I was talking about this a couple months ago. Where's his? Don't tell me they don't got. Okay, federal arrest. On January 28th, 2020, Lieber was charged with 2 federal counts of making a materially false, fictitious, and fraudulent statement about his links to a Chinese university. So this guy, Charles Lieber, who's from Harvard, right, and deals with Columbia and the Wuhan University of Technology, was working with Chinese students with nanotechnology, and ended up getting in some federal problems because he lied about having an affiliation with them when he really did. So you got Charles Lieber as an engineer for nanotechnology. You have these institutions that deal with the infectious diseases of farm animals. So what does that mean? That means that you can put nanotechnology into the meat. You could put nanotechnology into the food. Then you disperse the food out to the masses. The people consume the food. And then when the 5G gets activated, all of a sudden you coughing, you sneezing, you suffering from anemia, you can't breathe. So now this also comes in the water. This also comes in the air as well with chemtrails, because a virus is, let me give you the example of the scale of a virus. Okay. A virus to a cell would be the same as you to the earth.
Got it.
So that's small. So if I take a piece of hair from my afro, I could probably put 1 million viruses on my hair.
And that's a real afro right there, baby.
Yeah. And if I dump hair everywhere, then now you have these virions just sitting somewhere. You touching it, you breathing it in, you getting it on your clothes. And then with the right stimulus, it gets activated.
Well, I was just thinking of something when you said that, because the whole dilemma for me has been, okay, all right, I get the whole thing about the 5G, but how, they would need to have high transmission sources. And I just realized that if you really want to find the highest power transmissions where nanotechnology is using, you would get any of the common fiber optic transmitters, because those are all using nanotechnology. They're nanotransmitters to transmit light at super high distances. So if someone got a hold of one of those, then a lot of things that you're saying could actually happen. And you could buy that off the shelf, and that thing will do stuff that you would have to go into Back to the Future 10 years ago to have that, to be able to buy something off the shelf that would be an actual nano transmitter.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, you agree with that? Oh man,
Listen,
good boy. I'm feeling good right now. I got one with you. Oh my God.
Listen, this thing is wild. There's
Yes,
also denial system weapons that are made by the government. I'm gonna get into that right now, but if y'all want to see what I'm talking about, nanotechnology, we know that we're dealing with a market crash. We know that stocks have fallen. We know that people losing a lot of money, right? So if you want to follow the money, type in nanotech stocks and look at them. Look at nanotechnology right now, and you let me know if they suffering. They're not suffering. Look at the countries that are leading with nanotechnology. We're number one. And I think the UK is right after us.
Well, those are they secret partners. You already
yes, they're one and the same. We think there was an American Revolution. The revolution was that they finally agreed to disagree.
Right.
So denial system weapons are a class of weaponry from the government that deals with non-fatal weaponry. So like, we've heard of rubber bullets, and of course throwing gas cans in and stuff like that, so the person's not killed. So the new denial system is actually the 5G crowd controller, which is a truck that has a big 5G gigahertz, 5G, I think it's like 90 gigahertz they're using, somewhere close to 100 gigahertz transmitter at the top. And if you have a group of people together, you just hit them with that beam. And what it does is you feel like you've been lit on fire, like someone threw gas on you and you're burning from head to toe. And the reason why is because you have 4 million sweat glands, and your sweat glands are in a coil shape. And sweat is a saline solution, meaning that it's water with salt inside. So when you have water with salt inside of a solenoid, which is a coil, and you hit it with electromagnetic radiation, you're going to amplify it to a whole nother level. So you're going to feel like you're boiling from within.
Okay, but you're really saying that, I mean, not you're really saying, but that's sort of akin to having some like a microwave oven effect. So if I found your logic, so wouldn't they need, because the frequency is actually like just a path. What are they sending on that path that will excite the molecules inside of your core, whatever those core things?
The frequency.
Got to be something inside that.
No. It's nothing. It's nothing inside. Think about it. You make vitamin D from UVB rays. You have cholesterol in the fat under your skin, and when ultraviolet B hits your skin, you convert the cholesterol into vitamin D. So the frequency is the stimulus. But remember, we're dealing with 30 gigahertz all the way to 300 gigahertz. That is
I'm there.
Huh?
I'm there.
That's a huge span. Yeah. And we're dealing with areas of the spectrum that we haven't dealt with yet, and some of them have been manipulated as well. So we're talking about beaming, where people are actually getting beamed with death rays, and unknown to them because they can't see it.
So it's got to be the transmitter, and the frequency is just the path that they're using.
You're the transmitter. You're the transmitter.
You're going to be the receptor. Aren't you going to be? Because you need a path.
No, the path is the atmosphere. The path is the atmosphere.
But wouldn't we be the receiver under this particular sense? Because there has to be a transmitter somewhere that's turning up that frequency to get that reaction at the receive end. So we're like the receivers in I think in your particular analogy, because we're receiving some transmitted signal that's doing something.
Yeah, and we got phones on us too.
Oh, forget it. That's I think that is one of the most under talked about and maybe if you could come back when you come back the next time we got a lot of time, maybe we can get into the cell phone.
We got the phone.
Everybody got
we
that.
carry it with us. And when there's a group of people, like I said about the football field, one phone is one thing.
Deep.
10 phones is another thing.
That was deep, man. And you know what? Because if you have those engineers like at the 30 or 40-year guys who've been at these big transmitters like on the Empire State Building, I would be interested to see what their physical health look like.
You can already assume the worst. Assume the worst.
Okay, so
because that's also what's called the discharge on the power lines. It's called the corona.
Wow.
It's called the corona. The discharge from high energy power lines is called corona.
Wow, I didn't know that.
You know, and going back to the Pirbright Institute, now Pirbright is named after a person, and his name is Henry D. Worms. I'm not making this up.
Worms? How you spell this worms? How you spell it?
Worms.
W-H?
Like you infected with worms.
Oh, thank you.
Henry D. Worms, and guess who he's the grandson of?
Who?
Jeanette Rothschild. So when you say Pirbright Institute, you're really saying Rothschild Institute. And if y'all listening and don't know anything about the Rothschilds, I suggest you start doing your research today.
The plot thickens.
Oh yeah. This is the Rothschild. Look, this is how deep it goes. Do you watch James Bond?
Some of them.
Okay, so
I didn't like the one where when he fought with the black guys. I didn't like that one.
Oh, you know they gotta have that because that's come on. The first of all, 007 is created because he was created because 008 was the name of the agent who got Marcus Garvey arrested.
Oh, okay.
Okay, the informant that was with Marcus Garvey, he was Agent 008. That's why James Bond is 007. And Ian Fleming created 007 living in Jamaica. Where's Marcus Garvey from? Jamaica. Also under whose rule? British rule. Okay.
British rule.
Now, in James Bond has to report to the head of MI5. Her name is M. That's a real person. And her name is Elizabeth Lydia Manningham Bueller, who used to work for MI5, and now she's like an independent head. Okay. Now, there's also an organization in Europe called Kinetic, but it starts with a Q and ends with a Q. What do? They usurp and steal people's patents and make them their own. In James Bond, who's the guy who made all of the devices that we watched the movie for? That's what the movie was about. We wanted to see what cool new tech he had. What was the name of the guy who gave him the tech? His name was Q. And then I talked earlier about quinine and that he drinks the Kenna Lily drink. So the whole James Bond franchise has all of this in it. It's real deal. And I guarantee this new one coming out probably has to deal with a viral outbreak or something in there. Because they was like, I think in the trailer they were saying, oh man, she was like, something bad's about to happen to humanity, and it was like a nuclear holocaust or something like that. And she was like, no, worse. And I remember Bill Gates gave his presentation in 2015 when he was like, most people think the end of the world is this, and he showed a nuclear explosion, but he was like, no, it's going to be this, and he showed a picture of the coronavirus. Now, do you know who is an investor in Pirbright Institute and all these other facilities I'm talking about? The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation?
Oh, which is why they know a lot.
Right. This is why he stepped down from the board of Microsoft. You know, people want to say, why did Dr. Sebi say that he was a doctor and he wasn't a real doctor? Okay, what about Bill Gates? Y'all letting him vaccinate the world and he ain't no doctor.
And listen to Dr. Phil, and he ain't no doctor no more.
Come on, man. So
I'm just saying.
If you want to find the money, the M lady that I was just talking about, She deals with something called a welcome trust. That's also on Wikipedia. Well with two L's, like, you know, well-being. So welcome trust, WELLCOME trust. And if you look at welcome trust, they have a list of everything that they got investments for, which includes viruses and infections, even an Ebola initiative. An Ebola initiative. Now, if you look at the Wellcome Trust and you go down to activities under biomedical research, they're going to say something called the Diamond Light Source. And the Diamond Light Source is listed as the UK's National Synchrotron Science Facility. What is a synchrotron? Without getting too deep, a synchrotron is a very dynamic device that they use to accelerate particles to make a light that allows them to see the nanoscale images of proteins, viruses, and things on that scale. So they have this huge device that's 6 times the size of a soccer field that's able to create images of viruses in a computer so that they can deconstruct the virus, they can reconstruct the virus, they can take viruses from this virus over here and that virus over here, combine them, cross them, make them more virulent, more stronger, and so forth and so on.
Yo, brother, come on. You know, listen, we are, you know, we run out of time.
I already know, man. I wanted to leave on a very high note with the super bomb, because if y'all look up this Diamond Light Source synchrotron, it's going to answer all y'all questions.
But this is what I hope. I hope that in, you know, maybe a week or two after we've had a time to marinate what you've already given us, that you could come back and continue your very informative lectures, because you are a doctor and a scientist in the art of common sense, and people, so that's just my opinion.
I'll take
and
it.
I want to invite you back again. I guess Brother Leroy coordinated. But I would also like to say, do you have like a website or something? Or
yeah, I was just about to give my closing remarks to everybody.
Okay.
But before I do that, I don't want to say all of this and not give anybody a solution. Solutions are very simple. I'm not about to start telling you how much you spend this money on this, that, and the third. Most of y'all listening don't even have a job anymore, and y'all looking. So ironically enough, I mentioned the inverse square law before. The best thing that you can do is get away from the density of the radiation, which is where all the population is. So you want to get outside, first of all, and get more sun. Stop allowing non-native electromagnetic radiation to be the dominant light source in your life. You want the sun and natural light to be the dominant light in your life, because that's what your body resonates with. That's what it's built from. So you want to use that. Getting up in the morning, catching the sunrise, grounding, meaning you're barefoot, being in the grass, walking through the park, things like that will strengthen your immune system and get you stronger. Staying hydrated. People in New York and in the northern latitudes, remember, there was a great migration in the early 1900s, people escaping all of the racism and the killing that was going on in the South to get job opportunities in the North. Well, we've been in the North long enough. There needs to be a great migration back down to the South, because people need to get out of the higher latitudes, because it doesn't help people of color. We need to be closer to the 20s, which is the Tropic of Cancer and Capricorn, to get more light, to get more energy, and things like that. So that's a free way to combat with everything going on. The main thing is to get your vitamin D level up. So look up vitamin D in regards to getting UVB from the sun, and every now and then going down to Florida, Miami, Mexico, something like that, and getting charged by that sun. My name is Kamani. That's how Brother Leroy Baylor knows me by way of my mother, but the community knows me as KT, my initials, and the title, The Arch Degree. KT, The Arch Degree. Arch, ARCH. KT, The Arch Degree. You'll find me on YouTube, Instagram, as well as Patreon, and my website is KTTheArchDegree.net. So that's how you would find me.
So, brother KT Arch, what was the last part?
Degree.
Arch Degree. On behalf of, like Brother Leroy always says, you know, I want to say God bless you to you and God bless you to your family. And I want to thank you for coming on today. And I want people, if they like what they heard, to push the button and subscribe. And also, you know, get the free information that's available by these young brothers like him. And remember, if you tune in again, particularly when he's on, you just might learn something. Thank you, man. Peace.
Peace and love. Thanks for having me, y'all. Have a good
Same.
day.